happy to be able to be here and talk with you. It's been quite a while since I've had an opportunity to talk. So this past week, so my talk is titled Living into Spiritual Maturity. I see here at the top of my notes I put the spiritual journey, so, you know, something about the path. And this past week has been a time for me to observe where I am in my own spiritual maturity. A week ago today, right now, I was supposed to be on a plane going to Tucson for a visit, a much anticipated visit with dear friends that I try to do annually. And I got sick, and I couldn't go. And I was really disappointed, you know. And then right after I started feeling better, my husband got sick. And he ended up being hospitalized. He's gonna be okay, but nonetheless, it was, you know, another like something I didn't expect. And so the question I was asking myself is, can I keep my equanimity? You know, a disappointment not being able to go to see my friends, and then having sort of the uncertainty of what's going on with my husband's health. Was I able to take all of this in stride without falling into self-pity, without getting ahead of myself with worry about what was going on or what was going to happen? Was I being patient, generous? Again, maintaining equanimity. All of these are qualities of maturity, not to mention spiritual maturity, right? And so I had this opportunity to observe myself this week rather than be hijacked by it. And I think the fact that I was preparing for this talk helped me, because I was sort of in the thick of thinking about, what does it mean to be spiritually mature? What does it mean to be on the path? I was thinking sometimes about how we endeavor to teach or train children about dealing with disappointment, or dealing with anxiety, fear, and worry, and as if we have learned how to manage these things ourselves, right? I mean, okay, maybe we don't have a tantrum on the grocery store floor, but do we have a tantrum in our head? Do we still wish pretty strongly that things were different from the way they are? And do we still sometimes think if only X or only Y, then everything would be okay? Right? So it's not something that we get to give up just because we're an adult. And that's another thing that I was thinking about about this being an adult. I once saw a T-shirt that had the word adulting emblazoned across the top, right? And then it had 5 stars. But only 1 star was filled in. I thought that was pretty funny. Adulting gets 1 star. So, you know, one question I had for myself, and I don't dive into it in this talk, but I'm just going to throw it out there, is, you know, is there a difference between maturity and spiritual maturity? Because when I was looking at spiritual maturity, I mean, many of the qualities that we're trying to bring to our life are qualities of somebody that we'd like to be around, a mature adult. And I don't know that it matters really, but I think that it was the first time I'd ever really thought that they might actually overlap a lot more than I've thought about in the past. So shifting gears just a bit, there are so many ways to approach this topic, and I decided to share large parts of an essay by Norman Fischer, who we love at this Sangha, or many of us love at this Sangha, in a book that he wrote, When You Greet Me, I Bow. And this is a book of essays that he has, I mean, some of them might actually be transcriptions of talks he's given over the years or whatever. But he has an essay, I thought I wanted to read actually the content. So he's part 1 is notes on the joy and catastrophe of relationship. Those are in section 1. In section 2, he's got notes on thinking, writing, and emptiness. And then in part 3, he's got notes on cultural encounter. And in part 4, he's got notes on social engagement. So it crosses his spiritual path, his spiritual journey over the many years that he's been practicing. And the essay that I want to talk about is called Stages of Monastic Life. And it's in the notes on the joy and catastrophe of relationship. And in fact, when I first read this, I had said to myself as I was reading it, oh, this would be a good Sunday morning Zen talk. And I even went back to the table of contents and wrote that in here, SMZ talk. And totally forgot about it. And then when I was doing this, planning for this talk, I was going through some of my books, and it was like, perfect. Because what got me started interested in this whole topic was another Norman Fischer book that I'm reading, and it's called Taking Our Places, The Buddhist Path to Truly Growing Up, which is really a wonderful book that I'm reading with a dear Dharma friend. So anyway, the essay is called Stages of Monastic Life, and as I read through the stages, I found myself thinking that his stages align a lot with sort of my own spiritual journey. I've never been in a monastery, so maybe these stages might be more amplified if you're living in a monastery as a nun or a monk. But I really found them relevant to my own path. And so I thought I would share them and ask you to think about your path as I go through these stages. And then I realized, again, it was just mentioned in the announcements that there's a 7-day retreat coming up. I don't know if any of you are doing the retreat, but if you are, you could actually think about these stages in a condensed form as you go through a retreat. I think that they apply. I think anything that we give and invest our heart to is going to have some of these elements of these stages. So he starts out by sort of saying sometimes when we imagine a monastic life, or I'm going to say just a serious spiritual life, we imagine someone whose practice is deep and constant, someone who is always living into and within their faith principles or the tradition principles, whatever faith tradition that might be. And I think we believe or we hope that maybe that's something we can aspire to, that these individuals have this, consistent calm, this consistent presence, this consistent equanimity as we look at these teachers, priests, abbots, that maybe we feel have something more than that's what we're reaching for. And Fischer says that this image of this life is an ideal. And it's good because it gives us something to aspire to, but it's an ideal. And because it's an ideal, it means it's not real. It's not real. And if we get too hung up on that ideal, it becomes toxic to us. It becomes toxic to our path because we don't embrace where we're at and what we're doing in our present state, rather than thinking that this thing is somehow outside of us and beyond us. Ideals inspire us, he says, to surpass ourselves, and as humans we need them. But of course in reality, we in our lives never do quite meet them. And as Diane said a couple of weeks ago, we remain imperfect. It's the nature of humanity. So even this ideal we carry around in our heads and hearts of finding perfect peace, perfect generosity, perfect calm and silence can be problematic if we don't recognize that it's an ideal, not something that we can actually live up to. He goes on to share his own experience and what he observed from his many years in the monastery about what it's actually like to live in a monastery. A few weeks ago here at the center on a Saturday afternoon, we showed a movie that was called Enlightenment Guaranteed. And it was a great little film. Those of us who were there, I think, would all say that. And in the latter half of the film, they're actually they're filming in a monastery in Japan. And they're sort of filming the day. And you're kind of seeing what the monks are doing. And as you do that, I was sitting there thinking, wow, they do this every single day. You know, all of these rituals, all of these ceremonies, all of these services, it's just mind-blowing to think that every day they're getting up and doing that. So Norman lived that life for a period of time, and he says that that there's actually sort of, from his observation, there's sort of stages that the monks go through. And that's what I'm saying, that there's stages that I think any of us who give a serious effort to spiritual path go through. And then, because he's Norman Fischer, in the next sentence he says, of course, none of that's true. There are no stages. That's one of I noticed in his writing. That's one of his patterns. Is he'll state something and then in the next paragraph he'll tear it apart. You know, and it's just a really great, for me, I realize it's really great because he's helping me not hang on to anything too tightly, not to concretize things, not to make them so real that I can't see that these are models, these are structures, these are thought experiments for us. They're not real. And I think in our lives, sometimes we're just always sort of looking for that thing that we can is always going to be there. It's always real, and everything's impermanent. So it's good for him to sort of have this back and forth. So, stage one, let's just get right into it. Stage one, he says, is the honeymoon phase. It's typical of the first stage of anything we're attracted to. It's a time when we're thrilled with this new spiritual life. We love the place, the zendo, we love the teachings. We feel so grateful to be immersed and exposed to these new perspectives and insights. Do you remember that? I remember it still.
Hey Chris, would you call that like the first 10 minutes of sashimi?
Yeah.
Right, that I did. Yeah.
That's why I said that you could apply this to the retreat, is because that's exactly right. Fischer says this about this stage. Our fellow monastics are so kind and wonderful. The sounds of the bells, the simple hearty food, the early morning meditation, the landscape, the weather, the brilliant teachings and teachers, nothing could be better. It's exciting, it's energizing. You know, we feel relieved, we feel at home. We're like, I finally found some place that fits, you know, this is speaking to my heart. And as I said, I remember feeling like this, like I could breathe, that I found something that fit so much better than any of my previous experiences. And it's a really lovely time. And as Ken just said, and as Fischer says, it doesn't last very long. That phase doesn't last very long before the next stage emerges, which is, you're not going to be surprised, betrayal and disappointment. This stage, he says, begins when we begin to forget what we are escaping. He says all the problems we thought we had escaped from the real world, right? And this is going to take care of it all. All of the problems we thought we had escaped because we thought they were problems in the world and not in ourselves appear all over again. So, you know, if you think about that, you can really imagine how amplified this might be in a monastery, right? Because they're living in this environment, this context in which it could be, you know, the fact that things are coming back, problems are coming back to people probably is really disorienting because they thought they removed themselves from the world. So why would they be coming back? we realize that this new practice, no matter how diligently we practice, doesn't seem to be quieting our thoughts. That the noise of the world and the noise of our life still permeates. And Fischer says, this is a shock. We are so disappointed that these problems continue to show their face, that they have not disappeared, when we were sure they would, and they did for that short period of the honeymoon, right? At this point, we don't see that the problems for what they are, that they are our own internal delusions and contradictions, and that we project them out to the community that we live in, right? We begin to notice the community's many imperfections and limitations. The people here in the monastery, or Zendo, aren't quite as nice as they first appeared. Fischer says, quote, many of the people seem clearly disturbed. And how is that possible in a monastery? You know, we start noticing the physical space has its limits too. It's too dark, it's too light, it's too noisy, it's too drafty, it's too warm. You know, all of these things that start agitating us. You know, the offerings don't quite match up to what I need. And then he says, moreover, we begin to notice the many baffling and unacceptable aspects to the teachings. In fact, on the one hand, the teachings sound purposely confusing and incomprehensible. And on the other hand, they sound suspiciously like the religion that we just... Oh boy, I remember that one. I was like, hold on a second. You know? This is the sound of what I was raised in. And because I came to this path without any prior really knowledge other than, you know, the idea of a guru sitting up in a mountain or something, I thought it would be like completely different. But of course, all of the perennial traditions, you know, if you look across Judaism, Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, let's go outside religion, Stoicism, there's an underlying fundamental similarity to all of these because it's wisdom. So of course that there's going to be some of that similarity, but it's not what I expected. Okay, then he goes on, he says, and really horrifying, the teachers turn out to be a lot less fantastic than we imagined. Why didn't anyone warn us? If we're lucky, we eventually realize that as limited as the building and people and teachings may be, it is us, not the community, that is the source of our disappointment and our sense of betrayal. Yet some of what we are seeing as flaws or limitations, I mean, come on, some of them are true, right? There are limitations in any community. But our disappointment comes not from what was promised, but from our own rose-colored glasses that we had on when we came in, our own delusions, our own illusions, from our lack of clear seeing during that honeymoon phase. So the disappointment belongs to us. Fischer said that at this point, some monks he's talking about, and I'm talking about the community, some will leave, disappointed, in a huff. But if one doesn't leave, we begin to find in and through the practice that we are a raging mess of passion, confusion, hatred, and contradiction. It's in us, and enlightenment is a little further away than we thought it might be. So we're starting at the very first starting of becoming intimate with ourselves and seeing what goes on in our minds. So then we enter into stage 3, honest exploration. We begin to be curious about what is happening in our minds. We begin to be curious about the actual nature of our commitment to the practice and the community. Some days, he says, we are sure we want to practice forever, to take vows as a lay practitioner or priest, to devote ourselves completely to the past. Other days we can hardly wait to get out of this crazy place. There are so many other things we want and need to do. This stage, he said, usually does, and he says should, go on for some time as we're really exploring the field we're in, the environment we're in. If we have not paid attention to our mind up until this point in our life, there is a great deal of work that needs to be done, right? A great deal of excavating and sitting with and exploring and being curious about. Just really learning a new way to think about ourselves in the world. He says we need to be willing to watch ourselves vacillate and stay. So this wanting to stay, wanting to throw ourselves into it and pulling back. And I really appreciate that description of the push and pull. And there's no volition in it, right? You know, when I feel really grounded in my practice and super centered and strong, and then I find myself 2 months later being drifting, I don't feel the volition in that. It just sort of happens if I'm not being really disciplined. So there are times that I simply feel very, very grounded in my practice, and there are other times where I experience a bit of distance from it, you know? So this is a time to pause for a moment and remind ourselves about what we're practicing. So what are we exploring in this exploration phase? And what is it that how are we doing that? How are we doing that exploration? And, centrally, we're practicing through our meditation, right? That's a foundational practice that we do, and it helps us to see what our mind does. Helps us to become even more intimate with the way that we operate with ourselves and within the world. Seeing how untamed it is and learning to stay with it through its gyrations helps us build some stability and capacity for not getting hijacked by where our mind wants to take us. So I tell you, without my meditation, last week would have been holy hell, because I would have been all over the map. And it wasn't. And it was because of this practice. It's this practice of I'm more stable. I can see where my mind wants to take me, and I can make a choice not to go there. Or I can go there and notice I'm there, and pull myself out. You know, that's our central practice, right? And at the same time, we're also practicing lots of other useful skills. You know, we have our precepts. We have the paramitas, or 6 perfections, you know, generosity, ethical conduct, patience, diligence, meditation, and wisdom. Those are the 6 paramitas, and we're trying to embody those, are we not? We're trying to see if we can bring those into our life. Fischer's, the qualities, he talks about maturity qualities in this book. Let me just read them, because they're not too far from the paramitas. He has listening, persistence, connection, meditation, vowing, and conduct. Those are pretty similar, you know. But during this exploration phase, I think it's, stage 3, it's sort of like when we really start doing a deeper dive into these practices. In addition to our sitting, we're doing a deeper dive. Can we begin to manifest some of these in our life? And if we have difficulty manifesting them, why is that? What's underneath that? So we're really trying to work with that. We're holding this ideal of enlightenment, or the spiritual maturity that I talked about at the beginning, but our actual spiritual work, if you will, isn't to get to enlightenment. It's to persist in our work, to persist in that work that helps us know our mind, and to persist in our work that's relationship with other people, who and how we are in the world. So we've got this internal work that we're doing, and then we've got this outward facing work that we're doing. And as we've heard so many times, it is simple but not easy. I don't know about you, but I find it it's much easier for me to be a Zen practitioner in this room than it is out there. You know, it's very easy to get pulled off the beam by something somebody has said to me or whatever. But that's our work, and that's where when we're on the spiritual path, our spiritual maturity, this is where it comes from, those activities. And I find it personally useful to focus on one of those at a time, right? Like in generosity, to just focus for a week or 2 weeks or whatever. How can I be generous? In what ways am I not generous? Who am I generous to and who am I not generous to? Just opening myself up to studying that aspect for a while. Then I could, do something with persistence, ethical conduct. I mean, all of them have such rich possibilities for working with. We've talked about in the last, months, we've talked about Norman Fischer's slogans. They're not his slogans, but his book on Lojong. And every one of those slogans in that book could be worked on for a lifetime, So I think it's important, I'm just sort of stating my own bias here, but that as we work on our spiritual maturity, as we work on our spiritual path, that sometimes that we do deep dives into one of these areas to really get ourselves familiar with it in a way that we don't when we sort of just stay on the surface. So if I can list off the 6 paramitas without looking at a book or a page, it doesn't mean anything. Do they live in my heart? Can I bring them? Any thoughts or comments at this point? Yeah.
I just want to thank you for this because I just got back from a trip and I'm having so much trouble getting back into my practice. And that talking about the ideal versus our daily practice is very, very helpful.
Yeah, and also just recognizing that the variability that we experience is part of it. And so is persistence.
Yes.
So we can not get all balled up when we have one of these distancings, but we can notice it and recognize that persistence is needed, right? Otherwise we will just fall away, I think.
Yeah. Monkey mind is a thing.
Monkey mind is a thing. So stage 4 is commitment and flight. So we've been in this honest exploration phase, and in stage 4 is the point at which we come to find solid ground under our commitment. We're familiar with and accepting of our wobbly, contradictory mind, and now trust that there is something stable underneath it, to your point right there, even though we might not always be in touch with it. I want to say that again, because I think that's just a really important recognition. We're familiar with and accept our wobbling, contradictory mind, and now trust that there is something stable underneath it, even though we may not always be in touch with it. We see some changes in ourselves. Maybe we're a bit calmer and less reactive. Maybe not as solid or calm as we hoped for. But we are now recognizing that unrealistic idealism of our initial hopes, and we're okay with that. We're okay with where we're at. Fischer says we come at this point to some sort of willingness or openness to a giving up of self, a giving up of a personal agenda about our spiritual path. We come to it with sort of like, okay, this is how it's going to happen. And then I'm going to be enlightened. And we're sort of giving that up. And now we're just doing the work. Now we're just doing the practice. Without the thoughts, without the gaining thoughts about where it's taking us. Just that trust. We're on board for the ride, and we're more willing to enter into a serious commitment to the practice. It's at this point that he says, that we start to find ourselves feeling some responsibility for the community, for the Sangha. I love that too, because I remember that. I remember that in myself as well. It's when I sort of shifted and wanted to support the Sangha. Because this was a space that was important to me. It was important to my well-being. And so how do I help support it? Maybe we take on positions within the community. Maybe you take Jukai or initiate as a priest. Maybe you give talks on Sunday, you know. But then you'll recall he said that this stage is called commitment and flight. So there is that flight aspect of this stage too. He says just as soon as we feel really settled into our commitment, the demons of confusion return. Darn it! We thought we had things figured out, but it turns out there are still a fair number of unopened doors in our hearts and minds. The commitment we made in this stage to practice tends to open more. And we are shocked to find what is inside, our old passions, emotions, delusions, and anger. It's another peeling away of the onion layer, as you might have heard or talked about before. And it's another point at which some take flight. But if one can continue to sit with all of it, you're starting the journey to mature into your spiritual home. You can tolerate, manage, and sit with your passions, he says. He uses that word a lot, I think, to capture the whole panoply of human emotions that we experience. From anything from, love is just as distracting. Romantic love can be just as distracting as a breakup, right? So you really have to take the full panoply of emotions and see what hooks you. You let go in this stage of a few more of the dreams about what this was going to be like and kind of settle into this is a little different, but okay. I'm okay with that. The next stage, he says, is stage 5, the dry place, which we enter bit by bit, pretty much without knowing it. We practice sincerely and seem to go deeper and deeper with letting go, or said another way, we go deeper and deeper with opening up, with softening to our real life, our intimacy with ourselves. But this becomes exactly the problem. We become too settled. We seem to be getting a little bored, a little dull. Our seeking and searching mind has waned and we're feeling pretty comfortable. Our seeking and searching mind has waned and we're feeling pretty comfortable. We can't and don't want to go back to the way things used to be, but it seems that there's nowhere forward. We kind of feel like, is this it? Maybe a little fear arises, fear that I'm never going to really get on the path. I'm a little off. It's just not going to happen for me. I'm kind of in a rut. I've got a solid practice, but the energy isn't there anymore. So up until now, our path may have been challenging at times, and yet we knew we were always learning and growing. Here in the dry place, we seem to have stopped growing and learning. It's true our mind is calm, but Fischer says this is a dark rather than bright calm. He says this is the hardest stage to appreciate and cope with, even the hardest stage to recognize, because you're doing all the stuff. So it's got to be good, right?
I love the concept of the dry because think of it, I think of most everything through a lens of mythology, but when the cracking occurs due to the dryness, that's where the openness, at least for me, starts to come in. And it is, other than the fight flight that I get whenever my hips start to hurt, the toughest part of the process for me, and the toughest part of sesshin, is when I start to feel that which I didn't even realize I had, the delusions left, start to crack.
Crack again.
Yes, that's the dryness for me.
He says that sometimes elders and teachers can recognize we're in this stage, sometimes not. And moreover, he said sometimes elders and teachers may be in this stage themselves and may be unaware of it. So he said it's very important for each of us to remain open to the possibility that this dry place may be arising in our lives and in our practice, and have the courage to address it. And interestingly, he doesn't say much about how to address it. Because I think it's tough. I think it would probably be different for each of us. But you know, if there's a dryness to your practice, if there's a lack of energy to it, if there's a lack of motivation to it, maybe that's something to talk about with a teacher. You know? Moving right along, we move into stage 6, appreciation. He says, if we can pass through the dry place, which is always done in the company of and with the help of others. Right? This is not a solo practice. It has, you know, the image of Zen is so individual, the image of it. And it is so not individual. Or it's not only. It's got both those aspects, our inner work and our work with others, or through others. If we can pass through the dry place, which is always done in the company of and with the help of others, there is an opening into the simple joy of living a religious life every day, an appreciation for the tradition. We feel a connection to the ancients, who we see as people very much like ourselves. Texts that seemed arcane now become luminous. Our whole life becomes marked by gratitude. And I think there's a distinction here. At the very beginning, during the honeymoon phase, we're grateful for the zendo. We're grateful for the teachings. We're grateful for. And in this stage, our whole life becomes gratitude, right? It's no longer specified. We're living from a place of gratitude. And the appreciation stage moves into a stage 7 of love, as the gratitude and appreciation becomes the norm of our life stance. We begin to enter into love. Now we see others with their faults just as we see our own faults, and we forgive them and ourselves. Actually, I want to read this section from this particular stage, because I thought it was so beautiful. This love is different from the love we have known before, because this love doesn't include much attachment. We are willing to let people, places, and ideas go. In fact, this willingness to let go is the most essential part of our love. We know that we will eternally be with these people, and that wherever we go, we will see these same people, even if we never see them again. So we don't need to fear or worry. We are willing to let them grow old or ill and die, and to care for them and to bury them and to take joy in doing this. We cover the grave with some dirt and chant a sutra and walk away full of the joy of knowing that even in the midst of our sadness, nothing has been lost. No one has gone anywhere. A beautiful life that was beautiful in the beginning and in the middle has become even more beautiful in the end, even to the point of perfection. The brother or sister whom we are burying is Buddha, and how privileged we have been for so long to have lived with them and to be able to continue to live with them in memory and in the tiny acts of our own lives in the monastery. And we know that soon we will go that way too, and that in doing so we can benefit others and give to others what we have been given in the passing of this brother or sister. This is the 7th stage, the stage of love. I think that's beautiful. What a wonderful way to think about a life, you know, and a death. We know that we will eternally be with these people, and that wherever we go, we will see these same people, even if we never see them again. The last stage is letting go of everything, even the practice. Before talking about this stage, he reiterates the admonition that there truly are no neat stages, that the stages are simultaneous, spiraling, both continuous and discontinuous. He just wants to remind us that it's not an ABCD, but it's just a model or structure he's giving. He says at this stage there isn't any practice, or teaching or monastery or Dharma brothers or sisters. There's only life in all its unexpectedness and color. We can leave the monastery or stay, it doesn't matter. We can be with these people or any people or no one. We clearly want to benefit others, but how could one not benefit others? We certainly have plenty of problems, a body, a mind, a world, but we know that these problems are the media of our life, and we simply live it. There isn't much to say or do. We just go on, seeing what will happen. And that is it. If anybody has any comments or shares?
I was thinking about spiritual maturity and our developmental personal maturity as an older person. And I think that as I reflect on my years, I realize that I have grown in my ability to have spiritual maturity. I think when I was younger, I was too distracted by my work, by my family, and didn't have the spiritual maturity, the personal maturity, to refine my spiritual maturity to say, that's exactly what you should be practicing with. The very things that are causing you the difficulties. Now, maybe a little bit of this is because I'm retired, but I don't think so. I think it has to do with the perspective that comes with aging.
I think there is some perspective with aging, I agree. Yeah, absolutely. Did people see, did you kind of see yourself at all in any of these stages?
It also sounds like a long marriage.
It also sounds like a
long marriage.
Yeah.
Really long.
Absolutely.
I've been married for so long.
How long?
Well, the official ceremony was in 1982. And you go through, I suppose that's why, being a bride of Christ is that whole thing, but what you do, you go through, you have mad periods, you have, oh my God, why am I with this person? So it is kind of
I think he says here that perhaps the foregoing imaginary sketch of the stages of monastic life is also a sketch of the human heart on its journey to wholeness, whether we live in a monastery or not, right? And I think that that's true. I think that that's why I was saying in the beginning, anything that we give our whole heart to is, if we're gonna probably go through some of this process, one other thing that was running through my head as I was kind of writing this and thinking about it is when it comes to practicing the practices, whatever way that we do that, I was thinking about when there's a service for a jukai or for a priest ordination. At some point, the roshis say, with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your love. Something like that. Is that close? Yeah. And even just saying it, I almost get teary. Huh. It really speaks to me, and I think to myself, that's what I want to bring to my practice. All my heart, all my mind, all my love. And I think that it's what, we need something like that to, I need something like that to sort of remind me of the value of this in my life. And what it is, what kind of commitment I want to make to it. I just think that those are beautiful phrases. And I want to say that that's what you say before you have the people bow to their families.
Yes, yes.
Which is, oh my gosh.
Yeah, which is really a beautiful thing too. So, yeah.
I think my favorite part is the one right after that. Do you promise never to break these precepts, except for when you do? Yeah. Oh yeah, good. But it's a reminder that this is not perfection. This is process. And for me, enlightenment is no longer a destination, but it's every time I can give something up. I'm just enlightening myself a little bit more.
Yeah.
Just a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, we're all on the path.
Mhm.
Some path. You know, what path are you on? So I hope that was fun for you. It was certainly fun for me.
Can I say one more thing?
Sure.
I don't want to dominate it all, but just thinking about the word fear that you used. I think that fear plays a very important part in our practice. I don't want to go there. It's going to be really hard for me. Or I don't want to change. And I've been thinking about this a lot because next week I'm going to be talking about the Vimalakirti Sutra, and there's a major part in there that has to do with fear, which I don't want to give away because the Vimalakirti Sutra is a great story. But we get in our own way. It's because we're afraid that something disastrous is going to happen in our minds or the way we want to think we want to live. And I think I don't have an answer about what I'm talking about, except that the recognition of that for me has been really important.
Yeah, I think fear is a big driver in our lives, really big, and I think it shows up in all different ways that don't look like fear.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so, yeah,
Chris, that was a lovely talk.
thank you.
I call that in Sesshin, there's always a yuck day for me. It's around the second, third day where everything's irritating. And I've done it enough that I know that it'll pass, but there's no avoiding it. It's usually going to show up. And the other thing I think that I'm glad you brought up the dry period. I think that usually happens after people have been practicing quite a while. And I've been through it. It's very hard to, I think the reason why Norman doesn't give any solutions for it, because I don't think there are any for it, the only solution is to show up. And I've seen this a lot. You go through this, I think the Christians call it the dark night of the soul. Yes. Everything is just, you lose eros, you lose passion, you lose, it's boring. Everything is boring, and it's the same Dharma talk over and over. I once told my Sumi Roshi he had given the same Dharma talk his whole life. And he was kind of irritated with me that I said that, you know. But I think I've seen people go through that. There's just no humor, there's no joy, no smiling. But if they show up and they just go through it, you move through it, but I think it's maybe the most difficult
He definitely says
place in practice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
A great talk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to also say thank you, Chris, for this wonderful talk, because, the title, Spiritual Maturity, we all want that, especially those of us who are older, but it's kind of like, you just have to stay in and just practice with it.
I want to say one more thing.
Yeah, because you get interrupted.
Good job, roasted.
Non-working mic drop.
Are you done?
I'm done. Thank you.
I think another sign of spiritual maturity is you can't do full bows anymore.
Great. And you accept that.
Huh?
And you accept that.
Accepted, yeah.
Yes.
All right, I know there's great treats out there, so thanks everybody.
Thank you. Sorry.